Alright, so I have a lot of shaft to straighten here. So I might as well get some of it on video. Some of you might be asking, why don't I do more knapping? Yep, I'm going to be doing more knapping. But right now, instead of just not posting videos, I might as well post something because this is what I'm doing right now. So this is all alder buckthorn, and it's left overnight with the bark taken off. It was left outside also before this for a week. 1 week, just left outside in a shady spot. No sealing on the ends. And then I peeled it last night. Well, actually the day before also. It took me 2 days to peel all of these. In the time that I had. I could have done it all in 1 day, but I didn't. And it has not checked at all. It's one thing good about alder buckthorn is it doesn't check on the ends. It's a very lightweight wood. It dries out very fast. It doesn't check on the knots either unless it's a really bad knot. Let's see. I gotta figure out how to get this stuff to focus on the shafts close up. See, it doesn't. This is a pretty thick piece. Usually the thick ones are the ones that'll check because they've got a lot of water. But even with this one, it didn't check. All right, so why do I leave them out? Because when they're too green and you try to straighten them cold like this, or even with heat, the dimples are really, really bad. It dimples very badly. It still dimples right now, but if it's very green, it's just really bad. It compresses the wood way too much if it's still too green. Okay? It is compressing the wood right now, as you can see. But it's much worse when it's green. Alright, so I'm just going to slowly take this out. Hold on a second. I got some noise from my lamps. The shaft is touching the power cords and then it's rattling the lamps. Okay, so I'm just going to show the process of straightening these, a couple of these on video. This is a little bit different than the viburnum. Okay, and I actually went and I used my plant identifier application or my app on my phone, and I found exactly what I was looking for. I was looking for Arrowwood viburnum, and I found it, and I got some. Didn't realize that I had chosen the plant correctly until I actually went out and identified the leaves, and sure enough, I do have Arrowwood viburnum, but I also have something else that I need to check. Two other things I need to check. One, in that fishing spot. Remember that video with the fishing spot? I don't know what that is. It's some kind of dogwood, I think. I need to go back and check the leaves on that one. But the other stuff that I got was actual Arrowwood viburnum. Now, it's different from the alder buckthorn in that the buckthorn is much lighter. It dimples a lot more. It dries faster. And it breaks more easily. You can't really bend this all that much without snapping it. Okay, so you got to be more careful with it, but I prefer it for straightening. Maybe not for finished arrows, but for straightening, it holds its shape better. I already did 3 of them right here, and these have been sitting around for an hour because I've been doing other things. You know how it goes. I got to do 100 things before I can do a video. And these have stayed pretty straight. Although this one is reverting back pretty quick. It's got a pretty bad curve. If the curve is really bad and it keeps going back to its original shape and I can't get it to stay, I will just cut that curved part off and not use it if it's, being too stubborn. But if I can incorporate the curved part and, if it stays straight, it's best because the pith is very small. I got a question on one of my on the previous video. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can get that batch. Where am I? spined arrows shafts. Okay, where are they? Don't tell me. Oh, I know where they went. They're in front of me instead of behind me. Okay. Someone asked me, when I take this measurement right there, see what it says 11 millimeter or 7/16? That's right here at that mark. See the little triangle? Upside down triangle? That's where I measure it from. And why do I put that upside down triangle? Two reasons. One, to measure that spot, and also that's where I put it on the spine tester on this side. On the pedestal and the spine tester, it's right there. Okay? That's the preliminary spining. Some of you guys that are into making arrows, you know that I've skipped a lot of steps that you can take. Like you can, instead of spining it with the pedestal there, you can spine it with the pedestal there and do this part of the shaft up here instead of doing this part of the shaft down here. You know, instead doing you can do the left side or the right side. You can mix and match depending on the thickness of the shoot. I shouldn't say mix and match. You can adjust where you spine the shoot. All right, just test it until you get to the right spine weight that you want, and then just cut the ends off. You don't have to start like I did on just this one end. But what I did is I just wanted to test it. There's many ways to go about getting your arrow out of the chute. And one of them is to spine it all, spine it by adjusting it on the spine tester and seeing where maybe it's already spined correctly for your bow in some section of this chute, and you just cut off the excess. Either that side or both. What I did here is I just tested the end. I just tested it by resting it on the end so I get an idea. Okay? And I don't write the diameter in the middle because it varies a lot here in the middle. So this is where it's more critical because my knocks in the final stage are going to have to be, like one of these minimum sizes here, like this one here, 9.5 millimeters, the smallest size. If I decide that's the arrow shaft that I want to use, I've got to sand all of these down to that diameter here on the end, and then taper all of these the same as that particular shaft as well. Okay. All right. That was the sidebar. I'm going to have to write a pamphlet or something on this because this is even harder to do than the beginner Flintknapping series that I'm going to be doing. There's a lot more variables, I think, with dealing with arrow shoots than dealing with Flintknapping stones. Yeah. It's very similar in complexity, but there's many different ways to go about doing the arrow shoots, and what complicates it also is the different kinds of wood. All right, so that bend, it didn't stay right. It's to be expected that it doesn't retain its shape perfectly with cold straightening. Heat straightening, same way, although it's a little bit better in retaining its shape when you heat straighten, with one exception. That exception is if you leave it somewhere where it's hot, the heat straightening might reverse itself. If you heat the shaft up again, it'll go back to its original shape before you heat straightened it. You know what I mean? Like I've had an arrow set that I've left in a hot car or somewhere where the heat got to the arrow shafts and they all were warped and bent when I got back to them later. I had to re-straighten them. And if the bend is where the fletching is, if the, you know, the defective bend is where the fletching is, sometimes you got to remove the fletching to get it straightened out again. So it's a big hassle. But when you cold straighten and bundle, the straightening holds better. And yes, you can use heat and a little bit of warmth on this. Just, you have to be very careful when using heat on green wood, because it can lead to cracking or case hardening, uneven moisture variation, and a lot of times also it bends too well and you end up cracking it. You hear a snap, crackle, pop. Okay, more easily than a snap, crackle, pop due to cold straightening. Okay, so what is the diameter on this one, you might ask? That's a good question. I was going to ask that too. Normally I have this stuff right here. I don't know where the calipers went. It's 1/2 inch. Yeah, it's 1/2 inch. This is about the biggest diameter that I use. Right? Yeah. And the length, .41. Yeah, I try to cut them as long as possible. I do leave some of the, I do cut it with some of the stems still on there, just in case. Sometimes you can sand off these stems and it'll be fine, but other times the grain is just too wonky in this area, or the pith is too large. Sometimes once you start getting into the branches, the pith is too large. Let's see. This one I can't see. Let me see. I can't see. Let me see. Oh, I know where my calipers went. Is this where it is? Yes. Oh, and this is a good saw to have. I got it at Harbor Freight. Hold on. Okay. This saw has a very, very narrow kerf. It only cost me like $7 or $5 at Harbor Freight. It's excellent for doing these shoot shafts. You can even bring it out to the field with you and saw down the shoots. But I like using the clippers because it's very, very quick. And you know, when you're sneaky, you got to get in and out of there quick. All right. All right, so the pith on this doesn't look too bad. Looks pretty good. All right, so that's a remarkably, not thin, that's a remarkably small pith. Let me make sure, because I don't want to lie to you. No, that's it. Yeah, that's very good. As far as the pith goes, it's not that bad. Sometimes it's really bad. And like if you, for example, on ash wood, a friend of mine sent me a bunch of ash once, and a lot of these that had branches coming out had very, very wide pith, and I couldn't use any of the branched areas, which, you know, was a bummer, because I'd like to be able to have that option to use as much of the shoot as possible, just in case. All right, so now that I've gotten this end down, straightened down, or whatever, with this wrench straightener, I don't need to use the wrench on anything else. And what I've been doing, you're probably wondering what's that. I use this to help me to bend it in these other areas. Why do I use the rock? Well, 2 reasons. One, because the Native Americans sometimes use rocks to help them straighten, and I'm trying to figure out how they did it. And number 2, my thumbs get sore if I do this all day, or my knee gets sore if I do this all day. And I got bunches. I got at least 40 in there. Okay, and if it takes me 15 minutes per shoot, then what is that? 40 times 15 minutes? That's 10 hours of straightening. Right? If it's 15 minutes per shaft. I'm trying to get it down quicker. And if you have something solid to bend it on, you can reduce your soreness quite a bit. I mean, it's so much less fatiguing if you push down like this and bend it on a rock than if you were to do it with your thumbs like this. And yeah, you can use the arrow wrench. Yeah, but I don't like the dimple. See how it dimples it? I don't like to dimple it too much, although in this case I needed to do that because it was a pretty bad kink right there. On the thick areas of the shaft, like a 1/2 inch, yeah, you can dimple it because you'll sand that away. But on the thinner areas of the shaft, you're not going to be able to sand away the entire dimple, and you don't want a bunch of waviness or little cavities in your shaft, because it could affect the sound of the arrow as it passes the bow. You could hear a click, maybe a little click or something. And also it could lead to some weakness in that one area, but the weakness is not what I'm concerned about. Sometimes you can hear it rattling across the bow if it's got too many nodes or dimples or kinks and whatever. All right. So you just see how it's curved right there? You just push down on it, on the stone. And nothing gets sore. Yeah, it's not fatiguing or tiring or anything. Now, some archaeologists think that the Native Americans would heat these stones and then use them for bending. But where are you gonna put them on your lap when you heat them? You're gonna put it on a stump. You can put it on a stump, right, and heat the stone. But what happens when it gets cool? You got to stick it in the fire and wait, twiddle your thumbs while it warms up, and then bring it up again and put it on the stump and do your thing. I don't think so. I mean, that could be done that way, but that takes forever. And I'll make one arrow straightening stone that has a better dimple in it. This is all natural. I didn't alter this at all. But I'll make what appears to be an arrow straightener type stone. They have a dimple or a little channel cut in the middle. Okay. Now, if I were to actually use heated stones, yeah, I would have it on the stump. Now, the stump takes forever to make, but let's just say that I would have a heated stone. I would have a stump here, and I'd place the heated stone, with some kind of stick, little pliers made of sticks. Stick it on the stump because you don't want to touch the hot rock. It's got to be over 150, 180 degrees, maybe 200 degrees. You don't want to be touching the rock. So you got to take a stick pliers and put it on the stump. Do your thing for maybe one arrow shaft, and then you got to keep reheating unless you use more than one stone. So if you have one stone waiting next to the fire and one stone on the stump, once this stone gets cool, you just switch it out. So you'll have 2 of these for the arrow straightening operation. Now, what's wrong with that? That just doubled the size of your kit when it comes to the heating stones, if that's what they were. Why would you do that? Why would you double the weight and size of your kit? Well, you would say, then don't do it. Just take forever to straighten this stuff. Yeah, I don't think so. I think these straightening stones, or the arrow straightener stones, were used, but used primarily for cold straightening. Okay? That's the whole moral of the story. Yeah, they're useful, but during the cold process. That's it. And you have to also have this as backup. You have to have an arrow wrench as well. But the stone helps to prevent fatigue and soreness and bruising. Like if I were to do this on my knee all day, yeah, it'd get sore. Why does it even matter? You might say, man, just being wimpy. Why does it even matter? Well, you're probably going to be doing other things as well. And if your brain says, I didn't like that last time you straightened the arrows, I don't feel like doing them again, that's not going to help you be productive. Right? You're going to go, oh, man, I got all sore that day I was straightening the arrow shafts, and now my buddy wants me to help him do his, and I got to save a bunch up for winter so they can dry over the winter. I don't got much time. I don't want to do it. Wait, you can just use a rock to help you out. Yeah, and only one. You should only have one. And only if you want to be fancy. You can just get one out of the river and then toss it back in later. You don't have to have a little slot in there unless you're fancy. Unless maybe you're using it for something else as well. Maybe it's a weight for something else. You know, multi-tools are a thing. And I think many tools back in the day were multi-tools. All right, so you can see now using the combination of the wrench and the stone to straighten out this chute. And then when I eyeball it down the shaft, I do it this way too. I'll bend it like this and get it almost perfect, but it won't focus. Yeah, let's see, maybe it will sometimes. Yeah, it's working. Okay, good. I have that little yellow square on my hand right there, so it'll stay focused right there. And see how straight. Now this is the alder buckthorn is the spout about the same as red osier as far as the properties of it. It reminds me a lot of red osier. Yeah. I have straightened a lot of red osier, and it is a pain because it has more kinks in it than this. This is not too bad. Believe it or not, this is not bad. Red osier is worse in my experience. And what I think happened was I was gathering the red osier from areas that were not trimmed, you know, not coppiced, in other words. They weren't managed. So I had to, you know, gather a bunch of crooked ones because if they're not managed, you know, not cut down every year or every 2 years or whatever, they grow all crooked. For some reason, the regrowth is much straighter than the old growth. Yeah. Anyways, I had a hard time straightening the red osier that I had before. And it didn't matter what I did. Cold straighten, heat straighten. Because the original shoots were so bad. But this time around, I did plant some red osier. I think I've got some planted in my backyard. I need to look at the leaves on that too. And I'll be coppicing those eventually. Getting some straight ones out of that batch. All right, so can you see? This is just a simple process of using the stone. It's so much easier this way, and it can go much faster without soreness and without fatigue. I can do this all day. And that's the whole point. You can do this all day. And if I choose a stone that's a little bit more round with a sharper peak to the top of it, it can even do those stubborn kinks. But I'll use the arrow wrench. See, the arrow wrench just puts a dimple in there. I don't like the dimple, but oh well. I'll live with a little bit. I'll just make doo-doo with what I got. Yeah, these little kinks can be removed with the wrench. I mean, they can be dealt with the wrench. Okay. So yeah, this is real time, and I'm not going to edit my videos. I noticed that edited videos have a lot more views. I don't care. You've got the little sliding red dot. You can slide the red dot. You can even adjust the speed. You click up here you click on the screen and the little gear shows up right here, a shape of a gear, like the settings. Click the settings and it'll pop down a menu and you can adjust the playback speed. You can double it or whatever. You can even lower the volume. Oh yeah, so you don't have to listen to my chit chat. Yeah, because I'm stupid. Oh yes, you didn't know? Oh, if you're new to the channel, you don't know how stupid I can get. You don't know. All right, am I done? No, I still got a little bit. Now again, if I don't bundle these after I cold straighten, they will go back to their original shape. The trick is getting them bundled tightly after you do this. That's the trick. That's what keeps them straight. You have to let them season while bundled after cold straightening. Yes, yes. And then, once they're seasoned, I think the buckthorn can season for 6 months and be fine for arrows. Once they're seasoned, then you can do the heat. You know, dry heat on the dry shafts. Wet heat on wet shafts. What is wet heat? It's steam. But it's easier to remember the rule if you go wet heat, wet shafts. What is a wet shaft? It is green or just newly gathered. It still has sap in it. It still has wet sap inside. It's not fully dry. It hasn't reached the moisture content of 9% or below for you nerds. Okay? Once it reaches low moisture content, then you use the dry heat from a fire. Yeah. Or if you really want to be fancy and time consuming and make these arrows to the narrative, then you can heat the stones that you used to heat straighten. But I don't like to use heated stones. I will heat the shaft in the fire, right? I'll have a cold stone, heat the shaft, and then bend it on the cold stone, right? Right. There's no sense in heating the stone. So there it is. See the shaft? See, this is the before and after, okay? Remember what it was like before? It's like magic. Yeah, straightening is like magic. And once you get, see, I bundle 7 at a time, and I think the other bundle amount is like 12, 13, or 14. I don't know. Whatever bundles tightly. 7 will bundle very tightly. And I like 7s because it's like half a dozen, because you're going to lose one of the shafts probably eventually because you're going to kick it out of the batch. You're going to go, nah, it's not that great. So at least you'll have half a dozen per bundle. Okay? Look at my other videos and see why 7 bundles together are really nice. Anyway, they'll bundle together in a bigger amount as well, but I'm not sure if it's 12, 13, or 14. It'll be real tight when you bundle it. You'll find out. You'll just work with it. All right, so is it 29 minutes? Yeah, that's good enough, right? You don't want me to show you how to straighten even more of them? Some of you say, yeah, do like 10 on video because it's like napping. I want to see all the problems. Yeah, me too. I want to see someone deal with all the problems on the straightening. But these luckily don't have many problems. No. They're good. These alder buckthorn were gathered from an area that's cut. I think it's every 5 years or every 3 years. The trail that I gather these from, it's the sides of the trail are trimmed every 5 years because I've been looking and I saw, I just went not too long ago back to the trail and I saw stumps that had been cut and they've got 5-year rings on them. 5 years. So I think they trim those trails every 5 years so they don't get overgrown, which is good because that'll give me time. I can harvest a bunch of these next year. Yeah. And just have a bunch every year. Now, I'm planting some of these in my backyard. I've got a hill back here in our backyard, my dad and I. There's a hill back there that's got nothing on it but maple trees and black locust trees. So I can plant some arrow shoot materials. Yeah. I've got some buckthorn planted back there. I think I got red osier planted back there. I think I've got some privet that's already there. Common privet. 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 And I'm going to get a bunch of the arrowwood viburnum from a spot that I know of. Yeah. It's down near another trail. And I'm going to fill that hillside with a bunch of plants that'll yield arrow shoots. Yeah, so I don't have to go very far. Right now there's nothing on that hill but a bunch of weeds. But I'm going to change it. And I'm excited. All right. I didn't show that before. This was really wonky. But you see. Let's see. And again, this has been already semi-dry overnight because you can't bend this when it's too green because it's just too spongy. Yeah. And then, as you noticed, there is no cracking. I make sure with practice, it takes practice to not crack this. All right. And I got to make sure I don't use my thumbs too much because they're going to get sore before I have a chance to straighten very many of these. And I'm not going to want to do it because I got knapping to do as well. I'm going to cut that little piece off. I'm going to go, man, I'm getting too sore if I use only my thumbs, and I'm not going to want to do no knapping, and the guys are not going to see any knapping videos this week. That'd be a no-no. That'd be terrible. So I use my cold straightening rock, and I'm going to be all fancy and make one that looks just like the archaeologists say is an arrow straightener. And it will not be flat, because the flat ones with the grooves in them are not arrow straighteners. Nope. They've got to have a convexity. Can't be flat. I don't know what those are. Well, I have my ideas, but no one cares about what I think they are. Anyways, I'm going to be using these straightening rocks. I'm going to get all fancy and put a little groove in there. And people are going to say, well, if you put a groove in it, how can you tell the difference between that and a ladle weight? You know what? That's a good question, because I don't even think the archaeologists know the answer to that one. Yeah. Back in the day, someone carrying around a grooved rock, and someone might say, why do you carry that grooved rock with you all the time? You're too wimpy to straighten arrows? And you'll say, no, this was my grandfather's ladle weight. I just carry it for posterity. Yeah. There you go. Everyone's wrong. Who knows? Yeah. Sentimental value at ladle weight, passed down generation to generation. Because that was the ladle weight that was used on the ladle to take down the big bison. Yeah. The biggest bison ever. The giant bison. That was the ladle weight. It took 15 warriors to take him down. Yeah. The big bison bull. Defending the herd of 200. And that ladle weight was part of the battle. Haha. Okay. See, before and after. Voila. It's so magical. How do you do it? I don't know. I don't know how I do it. Anyway, after I do that, I'm going to cut the ends straight. I think I'm going to keep... I didn't have any issues so far, so I'll keep the whole thing, right? Sometimes if there's an issue on that fat end, I'll cut it up higher, right? But for now, cut that end off. Why am I going to cut the end off? Because what I like to do is I like to write data on the end. It's so much easier to write the data if I got a clean cut. And why do I cut them like this, slanted out in the field? Because of the plant itself. It's healthier if you cut these at a slant, so it sheds water, and for some reason the plant heals better if you cut it at a slant. And it also mimics the way the beaver cuts these. Yeah, beavers will eat shoots or eat the bark off of shoots, but what they'll do is they'll cut it off the main plant first and then drag it away. And the beaver cut on the plant is slanted like this too, at a 45. So if you want to be sneaky, like I always do, it looks like a beaver cut the shoot and not me. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, it's good for the plant. Coincidentally. Yeah. And if you don't have any beavers in your area, or if you've never observed them, you're not lucky enough to observe them or lucky enough to benefit from their presence, you're missing out. They will cut a lot of wood for you, especially the big stuff. Yeah. You don't have to go and chop it down. You don't have to make a stone axe and spend 2 days chopping the tree. You can just look around for what the beaver has already taken down. And you can make bows out of the wood that they've already cut down for you. Yeah. And many times it's good dry wood already. Because what the beaver like to do is they chew around the base of the tree and let it stand and fall on its own. They don't cut it down right away. Because believe it or not, beavers are smart, and it's safer to just eat around the edge of the tree, leave a little bit in the middle, and then walk away so that the tree doesn't fall on the beaver. Yeah. They'll let it fall on its own. And in the meantime, it dries out a lot. And it's good. As long as you're lucky, you can gather those fallen trees that have just recently fallen from beaver activity and then cut a section out and make bows out of that section that was already taken down mostly by the beaver. Okay? So you don't have to spend all kinds of time cutting these things down. All right, so is that 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's only 6. But if I had 7, they would wrap tightly. And it doesn't matter how thick they are either. They can be all different sizes and they'll still wrap pretty tightly if you got 7. Okay, because there's be 1 in the middle and 6 around the outside. Okay. Okay. That's it. Hope you enjoyed it.